11. Christmas time side hustle. As Christmas approached in 2018, two women were captured on home surveillance footage swiping 5 boxes off the front porch of a Riverview, Florida home. They appeared to be in their 30s or 40s, and one of the women can even be seen knocking on the front door before grabbing the final package. The sticky-fingered duo, who can be heard discussing what's inside some of the boxes, then made their escape in a dark Volvo. Homeowner Noel Jotham Rivera contacted the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, who shared the alarming video with the public in hopes that someone would come forward and identify the culprits. Several other victims who lived nearby also came forward to report stolen packages, leading law enforcement to wonder if the suspects were part of a bigger operation. Upset that the thieves stole gifts that he planned to give to his children for Christmas, Rivera also shared the footage on his own Facebook page. In the post, he explained that if the women were stealing in order to provide gifts for their own kids, he would be glad to help them out. In fact, he wrote, "If they would have just asked, I would have bought their kids even more than they stole." A few days later, Rivera's home camera caught video of some community members dropping off gifts to replace the stolen merchandise, serving as a reminder that there truly are good people out there. It's unclear if these suspects were ever identified or charged. 10. A surprising culprit. In July 2022, Clint Eastman's wife received a notification that some shoes she ordered had been delivered to the couple's Deerfield Township, Ohio home, but when she went to retrieve it, the package wasn't there. After searching everywhere they could think of and not finding it, they reviewed their home surveillance footage. They saw an Amazon driver take the package while dropping off another order. The Eastmans were shocked that the person responsible for delivering their order was also the one stealing them. They shared the video and their story because they didn't want the same thing to happen to anyone else. They spoke with local station WLWT and said that it wasn't the value of the package, but the trust that he and his wife had in their delivery drivers up until that point. The footage showed the driver setting the second package at the front door, returning to her vehicle, and then coming back to the front door without her work vest on and removing the first delivery. Eastman complained to Amazon's customer service department and was told that the worker would be properly disciplined and retrained on how to conduct a proper delivery. He was outraged by the response, which he felt was inadequate for the nature of the violation the worker had committed. Amazon also allegedly did not offer to reimburse the family for their stolen package, although they received a refund from the shoe company they ordered it from. 9. Teen dog snatcher. A family was devastated in June of 2022 when their dog was stolen off the front porch of their Hyattsville, Maryland residence. Homeowner Raquel Witherspoon told local station WUSA 9 that her 12-year-old daughter's Yorkie Avery had somehow gotten outside. By the time the family noticed and started looking for the pup, he was gone. The thieves were captured in the act on surveillance footage. In the video, a couple can be seen trying to lure Avery off the porch, only to walk up and grab him when it doesn't work. Raquel's family was distraught by Avery's kidnapping. She appeared on the local news, saying that she'd do anything to get the dog back. Avery's owners posted flyers all around the area with photos from the surveillance video in hope that someone would help lead to the dog's whereabouts, or even to her abductors. To Raquel's surprise, the thief called the number on the flyer and demanded a $1,200 ransom in exchange for the return of the family's beloved pet. Witherspoon agreed, and the captor demanded to see a photo of the cash so they knew she was serious. However, the thief changed their tone when they received the picture and began threatening to harm Avery. They also sent a picture of the dog in a cage, leaving Raquel's daughter extremely distraught. Thankfully, police managed to identify and locate the suspect, who happened to be a teenage girl from a neighboring area. She allegedly confessed to stealing Avery and trying to extort Witherspoon, and was charged in connection with the crime. Most importantly, the family got their dog back without having to pay the 4-figure ransom that the thief had demanded from them. 8. Stolen statue. For 13 years, a life-size statue of KFC mascot Colonel Sanders stood on the front porch of 92-year-old Gloria Ray's home in Fair Oaks, California. The Colonel became a fixture among residents at her senior living complex, where community members loved to see how Ray's dressed him up for different holidays. Then, one morning in August 2022, Ray's woke up to find that the Colonel had vanished. According to a Facebook post from the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office, She was devastated and wondered how someone could steal something that meant so much to her and to the community. Deputies worked hard to track down the statue in hopes of returning it to Reyes. They finally found the colonel after receiving a tip that someone had tried selling it at a local pawn shop. After taking some photos with the statue at the station, deputies reunited it with its owner. Reyes was overjoyed to have the colonel back on her front porch where he belonged. It's unclear whether the suspected thief was charged in connection with the crime. 7. Morris Jerome Simmons. In North Charleston, South Carolina, police officers received a call about a suspected package thief while out on routine patrol in early 2022. They located the suspect's vehicle based on the description they were given and attempted to pull the driver over. However, the man sped off and attempted to flee. Officers chased after him, but it didn't last long because the suspect crashed into another vehicle. His car overturned in an intersection during the accident, at which point he decided to comply with the officer's commands. 56-year-old Morris Jerome Simmons was charged with 4 counts of larceny, failure to stop for blue lights, and driving with a suspended license. The cops found all of the stolen packages in his trunk and returned them to their rightful owners. 6. Melissa Solomon. While arriving at their Avon, Indiana home after a family outing in late 2021, Ronnie and Amy Coursey spotted a stranger on their porch with a box in her hands. Suspecting that they'd caught someone in the middle of stealing their package, the couple blocked her truck in their driveway. Ronnie then confronted the woman, who claimed she was at the house to see someone named Andrea. He didn't buy the fake story and told her to return the package. The woman complied, but then got into her truck and drove through the family's yard in an attempt to get away. While following the thief's truck, the Courseys called the police and gave them the license plate number and a photo of the suspect. Officers soon caught up with 41-year-old Melissa Solomon and charged the woman with theft and criminal mischief. In an interview with local station WTHR, Amy Coursey said that she thought the suspect knew what she was doing and had possibly victimized other residents. The couple posted photos of the theft in progress on their front door, along with a warning to other thieves that they're being watched. 5. Janice Grant. In Sanford, North Carolina in 2022, Lisa Johnson's daughter told her mother that she saw a FedEx driver take the family's pet tortoise Holly out of her cage and snapped photos of her. Johnson wasn't initially too concerned. After all, the tortoise was returned to her cage unharmed. However, in a Facebook post, Johnson said that the driver returned 4 days later and stole the tortoise. This was especially concerning because the 5-year-old reptile was a Brazilian Redford tortoise who required a special environment and care since the species is not native to the region. The Lee County Sheriff's Office identified the driver as Janice Grant and charged her with felony larceny. While law enforcement has declined to say much about the case, according to Johnson's Facebook post, Grant allegedly claimed that she released the tortoise at a local pond. Hope of the tortoise remaining alive dwindled with each passing day, especially since fall was approaching. But sheriff's deputies were thankfully able to retrieve Holly, and she was soon reunited with her family. In her post, Johnson wrote that she hopes karma serves the suspect a huge slice of what she deserves in life. 4. Grabby Groundhog. In 2022, Kevin Benavides received a notification from Amazon that a package he was waiting for had arrived, but when he went to retrieve it from outside his Columbus, Ohio home, it wasn't there. So he checked his home security footage expecting to see a person stealing it from his porch. Benavides later told Newsweek that he didn't expect anyone to be daring enough to take the package from right underneath the surveillance camera, but he couldn't imagine that anything other than a thief was responsible. However, he was surprised to see that the culprit was a groundhog. The footage showed the critter dragging the package away just 8 minutes after it arrived. Benavides shared the footage on Reddit's r/funny forum, and it quickly made its way to national news headlines. He said that he'd looked around for the package, but he never found it, and was ultimately left empty-handed. 3. Dishonest DoorDasher. A Davenport, Florida resident was awaiting a food delivery one evening in 2022 when their surveillance camera captured footage of their DoorDash driver leaving the food on the front porch and making off with a package. In the video, the driver can be seen taking one last glance toward the porch before running to his vehicle with the box and speeding off. The Polk County Sheriff's Office identified the suspect as Kissimmee resident Moises Rios Avila and charged him with burglary and petty theft. Avila allegedly told deputies that he took the package as a prank, but they didn't believe his story. And while they don't believe the suspect planned to steal when he went out door dashing that day, they believe that he took advantage of the opportunity when it presented itself. Unfortunately, while most food delivery workers are honest, some do steal, and it's not exactly a new problem. In late 2019, a DoorDasher in Santa Clara, California was filmed running off with a package just moments after handing a resident their food. A week later, a security camera captured video of a DoorDasher stealing multiple packages from the lobby of an apartment building in Berkeley, California. Speaking with local station KPIX, a homeowners association board member named Ken Klemenko claimed that residents had tried to contact DoorDash about some recent thefts, but the company wasn't helpful. Residents in the apartment building where multiple packages were stolen reported having similar experiences when they called to complain. News station KTVU stated that DoorDash representatives had initially tried denying that a driver suspected of theft worked for the company. They changed their tune when they were shown a victim's receipt and said that they had deactivated the account of the driver. 2. Tanya Moore. A California firefighter was at work one day in October 2020 when his surveillance camera captured footage of a barefoot woman approaching his Shasta Lake home and stealing almost $200 worth of Amazon packages from his doorstep. His security system alerted him to the woman's presence, and he called the Shasta County Sheriff's Office to report the crime. With help from civilian tips and other evidence, including footage of the suspect's car, deputies identified the woman as 36-year-old Tanya Moore from Sacramento. Officers found her at a local hotel with the stolen packages in her room and said that Moore admitted to the theft. She was charged with petty theft and possession of stolen property and was ordered to appear in court at a later date. The sheriff's office used the incident as an opportunity to remind locals to remain vigilant as the holiday season approached and to avoid having their packages delivered when they're not home if possible. 1. Serial porch pirate. When Matt DeThomas looked through the peephole in the front door of his home in Columbus, Ohio in 2022, he saw a porch pirate in action stealing a package from his front steps. Home surveillance footage shows DeThomas running out of the house as the stunned thief drops the package, runs to his car, and drives off. The homeowner said that he caught a glimpse of the man's car and that it was stuffed to the brim with packages. He estimated that there were between 30 and 40 parcels in the car, and that it seemed like the thief had driven through the neighborhood taking anything he could find. The brazen theft in broad daylight occurred amid a concerning uptick in porch piracy in the Short North area. It wasn't the first time DeThomas captured footage of someone stealing his packages, and around the time of the most recent theft, several others in Columbus had made similar reports. While the incidents didn't bring any imminent arrests, it became a big enough problem for police to be on high alert. And as a result, several of the thieves were called out in public social media posts featuring their photos.
Number 10. Françoise de Maurier. While working on a flight from Philadelphia to Hartford, Connecticut back in 1962, a 29-year-old stewardess named Françoise de Maurier noticed a whistling noise coming from the rubber seal surrounding her service door toward the end of the plane. The sound was caused by air escaping from the pressurized cabin, which isn't supposed to happen, meaning that something was seriously wrong. De Maurier told the pilot about the problem, at which point the co-pilot was instructed to investigate. The co-pilot determined that the problem could be remedied by stuffing pillowcases around the loose parts of the seal. Just a few minutes later, de Maurier got on the intercom and instructed passengers to stow any loose items in preparation for landing. Right as she finished the announcement, the faulty door blew wide open and sucked her out into the open sky. Sadly, she fell to her death. The other flight attendant on duty was in the restroom at the time, and the restroom door blew open during the ordeal. She would have been sucked out of the plane just like her co-worker if two passengers hadn't sprung into action to keep her inside the aircraft. De Maurier's body was later found in a pasture in the small town of Farmington, Connecticut, just south of the flight's destination. Number 9. William Cone. During the early 1980s, the now defunct Pan American World Airways began receiving letters from customers and employees alike praising a flight attendant named William Cohen for his outstanding service. Staff members went to add the letters to Cohen's personal file, but it was nowhere to be found, and when they performed a more thorough search, they realized that nobody by his name had ever been employed by the airline. An investigation ensued, and detectives were shocked to discover that for 2 years, Cohen had posed as a flight attendant, saving himself an estimated $40,000 in airfare around the globe. He was actually a shop owner from Miami, and he managed to travel to London, Honolulu, Johannesburg, Hong Kong, and other major cities free of charge without arousing any suspicion from legitimate crew members. Cohen was caught by authorities for playing his role too well, rather than not good enough, and he tried to carry on the ruse even after it was clear that law enforcement had caught on to it. According to Detective Bill Sayers, Cohen continued to insist that he was a Pan Am employee while getting arrested. In addition to boarding flights in an attendant's uniform, Cohen also posed as an employee to buy discounted tickets. When he was in uniform, it was surprisingly easy to walk right past security and past other company workers without even being questioned. This would be highly unlikely to happen nowadays with the heightened security measures that have been implemented in the years since Cohen's arrest. Number 8. Julianne March. During a United Express flight from Chicago to South Bend, Indiana in 2022, passengers became so concerned about how one flight attendant was acting that some people pulled their phones out and hit record. One of the travelers who captured the bizarre behavior on camera was Aaron Sherb, who told the South Bend Tribune that he suspected 49-year-old Julianne March of being under the influence. Sherb described how the stewardess didn't make eye contact with passengers during boarding and how she appeared to be leaning against the galley. During the standard security announcement that happens at the beginning of every flight, her speech seemed very slurred. March, who's from Waukesha, Wisconsin, was reportedly bumping against seats as she walked up and down the aisle, checking the overhead compartments. Sherb also told the press that he watched a passenger strap March into her seatbelt when they noticed it wasn't secured. He said that the stewardess didn't get out of her seat the entire flight and that she appeared to be passed out. When the plane touched down in South Bend, Sherb voiced his concerns to one of the pilots. March was then met by 2 uniformed officers, and according to witnesses, she started crying when she saw them. She also allegedly said that she believed she was in Chicago when the officers asked her what city they were in. When she was ordered to take her breathalyzer test, her blood alcohol level was 0.204, 5 times the limit for airline employees, and as a result, she was charged with misdemeanor intoxication. Sherb said that United Airlines offered him compensation when he called the company out in a tweet, but that he felt the entire flight deserved to be reimbursed since everyone's safety was jeopardized. He also said that he hoped the company didn't outright fire March and that instead they offered her help for addiction. Number 7. Marsha Gay Reynolds. While working as a flight attendant for JetBlue Airlines in 2015, former beauty queen Marsha Gay Reynolds picked up an illicit side hustle trafficking cocaine and drug money for Gaston Brown, a 42-year-old Jamaican national and a legal immigrant to the US. As someone who regularly passed through various airports, Reynolds was typically subjected to a much lighter screening process than the standard traveler, and her luggage was far less likely to be scrutinized. In early 2016, she picked up 27 kilos, 60 pounds of cocaine from Brown at LAX Airport in Los Angeles, just as she had several times before. But this time, she was randomly selected for additional screening, which is when Transportation Security Administration agents open up a traveler's luggage and rifle through the contents. While being escorted to a secondary screening area, she dropped her luggage, took her shoes off, and ran. Reynolds went down an upward-moving escalator as she desperately attempted to get away from TSA officers. She remained on the run for nearly a week before surrendering to Drug Enforcement Administration agents at JFK Airport. The disgraced flight attendant spent the next several months in custody and ultimately pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to possess and distribute cocaine. Reynolds was given credit for time served and was released upon her sentencing. Brown was also charged in connection with the case and was sentenced to nearly 14 years in federal prison. Number 6. Michael Philippe. During a Virgin Atlantic flight from London to Orlando in 2002, a flight attendant named Michael Philippe exited a restroom and alerted his colleagues to a disturbing message scrawled across the mirror. It said, "America must die." Another message, written on an air sickness bag, praised Osama bin Laden and contained a bomb threat. The jumbo jet was diverted to Keflavik, Iceland, which was the nearest airport equipped to handle an aircraft of its size. No evidence of an actual explosive was found on the plane, but the major disruption to the flight containing 322 passengers was damaging enough. Philippe claimed he found the threatening messages, but after analyzing the handwriting and fingerprints at the crime scene, authorities accused him of being the culprit. He was arrested 2 months after the incident at Newark International Airport in New Jersey as he was about to start his shift on a flight to London. In the end, the former flight attendant pleaded guilty to making false statements and was sentenced to 5 years of probation. Number 5. Jonathan Tafoya Montano. During a flight from Dallas to Detroit in early 2016, American Airlines flight attendant Jonathan Tafoya Montano alerted crew and passengers to a fire that had broken out in one of the bathrooms. The 23-year-old sprang into action and extinguished the flames, much to the relief of everyone on board. Luckily, no one was injured. Air traffic controllers assigned emergency status to the flight and gave the aircraft landing priority. But all was not as it seemed. The incident sparked an investigation, and the FBI concluded that Tafoya Montano started the fire himself. Any other scenario was unlikely, since nobody had used the bathroom for at least 15 minutes before the fire started. Authorities didn't announce a motive, but some speculated that the suspect was trying to make himself look like a hero. Evidence at the scene indicated that he lit a paper towel ablaze using a Bic lighter. Tafoya Montano allegedly gave investigators several different stories about the fire before admitting to being the culprit behind the blaze. As a result, he was charged with destruction of aircraft or aircraft facilities and making false statements. After his arrest, he took a plane to Dallas, where he was living at the time. Prior to boarding, the judge sternly ordered Tafoya Montano to remain seated the entire flight, while a corporate security officer sat next to him. The court found him guilty and he was sentenced to 15 months in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised release. Prior to the former flight attendant's career-ruining arrest, his only brush with the law was a DUI from 2 years earlier. He worked for American Airlines for about 1.5 years before the in-flight fire resulted in his termination. Number 4. Marcelo Chavez and Ronald Maldonado. 44-year-old Delta flight attendant Marcelo Chavez and his fellow flight attendant boyfriend, 35-year-old Ronald Maldonado, had just arrived at Miami International Airport from Brazil in 2022 when U.S. Customs and Border Protection randomly stopped them. While going through the off-duty couple's luggage, agents found 2 glass cosmetic containers filled with what they determined to be liquid ketamine and a drug called GBL. They also found a suspected stash of 41 methamphetamine pills. The suspects allegedly told border officials that they didn't know how the illicit substances wound up in their bags, but they admitted that they'd been using drugs in Brazil. Following their arrest, Delta Airlines issued a statement reassuring the public that the company was fully cooperating with law enforcement and that Chavez and Maldonado were suspended pending the case's outcome. Both men were charged with drug trafficking and their cases are ongoing. According to the most recent update, a judge ordered a special hearing for Chavez, during which he was required to prove that the $115,000 he posted for bond came from a legitimate source of income. Number 3. Carla Alvarado. 33-year-old Carla Alvarado was working as a flight attendant for JetBlue Airlines when she agreed to help a friend traffic heroin into the United States on an ongoing basis. She smuggled more than 2 pounds, 1 kilo of the drug from Bogota to Orlando by shaping it to make it look like chocolates and hiding it beneath a bodysuit she wore under her work uniform. She was apprehended by federal agents in late 2013 and agreed to help authorities catch her accomplice in order to lessen her own legal consequences. Upon completing her final job, she and her co-conspirator, Jorge Luis Alomar, were handcuffed at the scene to make it look as if she hadn't snitched. Afterward, both of them were taken into custody separately. During a search of Alomar's home, authorities discovered more than 200 grams, 0.44 pounds of heroin hidden beneath the carpet and in a bathroom ceiling vent. Both defendants pleaded guilty in the end, and Alomar was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, while Alvarado received a 2-year sentence. Number 2. Rebecca Valley. While passing through a TSA line at Reagan National Airport in Arlington, Virginia in late 2022, Republic Airways flight attendant Rebecca Valley allegedly stole a passenger's gold bracelet. The 60-year-old, who lives in Wesley Chapel, Florida, was nabbed by authorities after the passenger went through the checkpoint and couldn't find her jewelry. She reportedly told authorities that the bracelet was worth around $8,000. Police and TSA agents reviewed security footage of the line and saw a woman in a flight attendant's uniform pick up the bracelet. They caught up with Valley at a nearby terminal and arrested her in connection with the alleged theft. She was charged with 1 count of grand larceny as a result. This wasn't the first time a flight attendant was caught stealing a passenger's valuables. In 2010, an Air France stewardess was arrested after arriving in Paris from Japan. The 47-year-old, identified only as Lucy R., was accused of stealing jewelry and credit cards from sleeping business and first-class passengers. She was apprehended following an investigation that was launched after 5 travelers from Japan discovered missing property and filed complaints with French police. Lucy reportedly admitted to 27 thefts, and evidence showed that she took the stolen jewelry to a pawn shop in France. Rebecca Valley's case appears to be ongoing, so the woman's official sentencing has yet to be seen. Number 1. Teresa White. 41-year-old Teresa White made the biggest mistake of her career in late 2022 when she allegedly attempted to board a flight with more than 3 pounds, 1.4 kilograms of fentanyl in her possession. The off-duty flight attendant from Dallas was stopped by security in a known crew member line at the San Diego International Airport, where the drugs were reportedly found taped to her midsection. While airline employees are typically allowed to skip past the normal security protocols that pretty much everyone else has to go through at an airport, they aren't exempt from random searches. And that day, White was the lucky pick. Authorities charged her with possession with intent to distribute, but that was just the beginning of her problems. In addition to landing herself on the wrong side of the law, she was fired from the airline she worked for. White initially pleaded not guilty to the charge, but that changed just weeks later when she entered a guilty plea. She now faces up to 20 years in prison and is scheduled to be sentenced in March of 2023. Number 9. Christopher Ballard. Christopher Ballard and his friend were sitting in his parked car in Washington, D.C. one day in late 2012 when they were approached by 2 men who ordered the couple to get out of the car. The pair refused, and one of the men pulled out a gun. Ballard sped off as the wannabe carjacker shot at his vehicle, hitting it at least 3 times. He went to the police, but could only identify the gunman by his nickname and appearance. However, that was enough for detectives to connect a man named Delonte Smith to the crime. They charged him with 2 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon. Ballard agreed to testify against Smith in court, but this would end with fatal consequences for the man. The trial had yet to take place 5 months later, when Smith's brother, Antoine Mayhand, approached him on a sidewalk and threatened to stab him. For their safety, Ballard and his friend were put up at a motel while they waited for the trial to start. The authorities overseeing the case cautioned the pair against returning to their neighborhood, but Ballard ignored the advice. 2 days before the trial was set to begin, police spotted him walking in the area around 2 o'clock in the morning. Familiar with the situation and aware of the danger that Ballard was putting himself in, the officers urged him to go back to where he was staying. He agreed to return to the motel, but was shot multiple times during his walk back. Nearby officers heard the gunfire and rushed to the scene, but it was too late to save Ballard's life, and the shooter was long gone by the time the police arrived. Nobody was ever charged for Ballard's murder, but all signs pointed toward him being killed to prevent him from testifying. Smith was later convicted on several charges related to the attempted carjacking and received an 11.5-year prison sentence. Number 8. Kayla Campos. 21-year-old Kayla Campos and her boyfriend were playing Pokemon Go in Albuquerque, New Mexico one night in 2019 when they unintentionally drove up on a robbery in progress. They witnessed two people robbing a victim who was in their car. Wanting no involvement with the crime, the young woman attempted to turn her car around and drive away. However, while attempting to flee, one of the culprits began shooting at her. A bullet struck the back of Kayla's neck, causing her to crash her car into a house. She was rushed to the hospital, where she unfortunately died from her injuries. In the end, killing Kayla didn't protect the suspects from being caught. Other witnesses eventually came forward, including the robbery victim who identified 19-year-old Isaiah Garcia as the shooter, and his friend, 19-year-old Gabriel Marquez, as his accomplice. Text messages and other evidence also helped detectives link the suspects to the case. Garcia was not charged with Kayla's murder until nearly a year after it happened, and by that time he was already in jail for the fatal shooting of a 17-year-old high school student. He was convicted of first-degree murder in that case and is now awaiting trial for Kayla's murder. Garcia earned a third murder charge earlier this year after fatally stabbing a fellow inmate as revenge for killing his brother. Needless to say, he most likely will not be getting out of prison anytime soon, if ever. Number 7. John Dowry. In 2004, John Dowry was confined to house arrest in East Baltimore. He faced nearly a decade behind bars for drug and gun-related charges. The 38-year-old father of 9 didn't want to go to prison, but a conviction was likely. Realizing that his best bet was to cooperate with law enforcement, Dowry agreed to assist in the investigation and trial of a murder he had witnessed. In exchange for his help, authorities allowed him to leave his home. He entered a drug treatment program, got sober, landed a job at a factory, and continued to work toward getting on the right path. Sadly, Dowry's fresh start was cut short when he arrived home from work one morning in 2005. He reached his front door and was waiting for his girlfriend to let him inside when two men approached him from behind and shot him. Dowry ran from the gunman, who followed him and continued to shoot. He made it through the back door of his home and collapsed with 6 gunshot wounds to his arms, legs, and back. Miraculously, surgeons managed to save his life. However, it was clear that Dowry was a known snitch and that his life would remain in danger if he stayed in the area. He moved to a house outside the city and kept a low profile until Thanksgiving 2006, when he returned to East Baltimore for a family dinner. At one point during the celebration, Dowry went across the street to a convenience store and then a bar to buy cigarettes and have a beer. He wasn't in there very long before someone approached and shot him in the head. Law enforcement eventually got witnesses to talk and charged drug traffickers Melvin Gilbert and Darren Goods with Dowry's murder. They were both sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Number 6. Jakema Princess Hansen. 14-year-old Jakema Hansen was hanging out with her neighbor in Washington, D.C.'s Northwest neighborhood in 2004 when a gunman entered the home and opened fire on the girls. Jakema, who went by the nickname Princess, tried to run from the shooter, who chased her through the house and shot her execution style in the back of the head. Just a day earlier, Princess had been summoned to the police station for questioning about a recent shooting that she had witnessed. According to the teen's mother, Judy Ann Hansen, who spoke with the Washington Post after the murder, authorities offered to relocate the girl and her family for their safety if she cooperated. In fact, officers had stressed the dangers of being a witness to a violent crime. However, Princess declined the offer and claimed that she hadn't seen anything. Shortly after the teen was killed, police stopped 22-year-old Franklin Thompson a few blocks from the crime scene. As it turned out, he had been commissioned to kill Princess by Marquette Ward, who was the suspect in the shooting she had recently witnessed. Even though she had refused to speak to police, Ward didn't trust that she'd stay quiet and decided that she needed to be permanently silenced. Police later charged Ward and Thompson with Princess's murder. Thompson received a 63-year prison sentence, and Ward, who was also found guilty of another murder, was sentenced to 133 years behind bars. Number 5. Kenneth Moore. After returning home from grocery shopping with his wife to their Richmond, Virginia apartment complex one day in 2016, Kenneth Moore decided to sit in his car and relax for a few minutes while listening to some music. He watched as two men on bikes rode up and fired multiple bullets in the direction of the building. Moore fled inside the apartment with his wife following behind him. He and his wife, Shamik Massey, were initially unaware that one of the bullets had pierced through the windshield of a parked car and killed a 52-year-old woman named Carmela Winston. Investigators found no reason to suspect that anyone wanted to kill Winston and theorized that the killer had meant to shoot someone else. After receiving a tip about a possible suspect, detectives needed to find a witness who had seen the shooter and could corroborate the statement. They went door to door, asking residents in Moore's building if they had seen anything. When they got to Moore's apartment, he was hesitant at first, but he told the detectives to focus their efforts in a nearby alleyway. They found shell casings at the site and returned to Moore's home, hoping that he might have more information for them. He reluctantly admitted that he had seen the shooter and remembered him well enough to identify him if he saw him again. Moore looked at a photo lineup and identified George Trevin Watson Scott. That was enough for police to charge Scott with second-degree murder. With the help of Moore and his wife's testimony, the judge convicted Scott and sentenced him to 40 years in prison. Just weeks later, a group of men approached Moore's vehicle outside a supermarket and threw a brick through his window. However, he sped off before they could attack him. Realizing that his family was now in grave danger, he and Massey, along with their 4 kids, packed their belongings and moved outside the area. The Richmond Police Department helped pay for the move, but the uprooted couple were still left struggling as they started over in a new and unfamiliar place. Speaking with the Washington Post, Moore said that he felt like he did the right thing, despite the difficulties that came along with it. Number 4. Muhtasim Suleiman. One day in 2016, 2 members of Chicago's Four Corner Hustlers gang entered a cell phone store at the Humboldt Park neighborhood and shot fellow gang member Tommy Lee Pledge. The store's owner, Muhtasim Suleiman, took cover as he watched one of the gunmen remove a pistol from the victim's waistband and fire several more bullets into him as he lay dying on the floor. Police charged 23-year-old Deshaun Jones and 25-year-old Terrence Scott with the crime, after catching the men with the murder weapons and connecting them to the case through ballistics testing. Finally, in 2019, prosecutors told the judge overseeing the case that they were ready to go to trial. Just days later, Suleiman closed his store for the night and had started walking toward his car when a masked gunman shot him dead in the street. Nearby police officers ran toward the area as the shooter fled the scene in a getaway car. Earlier this year, investigators traced the murder to 22-year-old Kyrell Pittman through DNA testing on a mask that was left behind at the crime scene, along with other evidence, including jailhouse phone calls between Pittman and Terrence Scott. It was clear, based on the recordings, that Scott had commissioned Pittman to kill the only witness in his pending murder case, and the pair had meticulously planned out the details. Pittman was on electronic home monitoring for other criminal charges when he allegedly shot Suleiman. Data from his ankle monitor shows that he left his house anyway and wasn't home at the time of the murder. He's now off the streets and behind bars, facing a murder charge. It's unclear where the case against Scott and Jones will go now that the sole witness is no longer around to testify. Number 3. Teen tragedy. 73-year-old James Simi Lambert Jr. was minding his business on a Philadelphia sidewalk in June 2022 when a group of kids brutally attacked him for no reason. They chased the senior citizen and beat him with a traffic cone as he tried desperately to get away. Unfortunately, the elderly man died from his injuries. After not having much luck identifying the young culprits, police released surveillance footage of the attack in hopes of receiving help from the public. 2 14-year-olds were charged with murder, including Gamara Mosley, who's being tried as an adult. Other kids who were at the scene, including a 13-year-old girl who tried to push her friends away from the victim, a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old, were released without charges. A little more than a week after the suspect's arrests, the 13-year-old witness was shot in the back of her right ear, and the bullet traveled through her jaw. She was hospitalized, but was in stable condition and survived the attack. Authorities don't believe that the girl's connection to the attack on Lambert has anything to do with the shooting, but they weren't immediately able to rule it out. More than a month after the murder, Lambert's family said that they were being harassed by groups of adolescents who had approached their home on 3 separate occasions. Between the brutal nature of the elderly man's murder and the continued harassment against his family, it's easy to assume that somebody involved in the crime could have been trying to eliminate a witness. Number 2. Malcolm Heath. In 2007, federal authorities charged Washington, D.C. residents Edward Washington II and Malcolm Heath with fraud and identity theft. They had allegedly been trying to steal the identity of former NFL player Orlando Brown in a scheme to steal roughly $250,000. Heath cut a deal with prosecutors and agreed to testify against Washington in exchange for a 5-year prison sentence with 4 years suspended. Days before Washington's trial was scheduled to begin, he learned that Heath had turned against him. To prevent his childhood friend and former business partner from testifying, Washington solicited a 38-year-old man named Calvin Tinsley to kill Heath. Tinsley shot the father of 2 dead outside a car repair garage he ran. However, the murder created far more problems than it solved. It didn't take long for law enforcement to zero in on Washington and Tinsley as the prime suspects, and they were later charged with first-degree murder. Both men were found guilty and sentenced to 36 years in prison. Number 1. Robert Alexander. Robert Alexander Jr. and his mother had just arrived home from dinner one evening in 2005 when he received a call from a friend. They asked him to meet a few blocks from where he lived in Washington, D.C.'s northeast neighborhood. He told his family he'd be right back, but was shot dead near an alleyway just minutes later. A gunman who remains unidentified to this day fired 9 bullets into the 22-year-old, making sure that there was no chance he would survive. Nobody in Alexander's life hated him on that level, leading police to believe that someone killed him to prevent him from cooperating with law enforcement after witnessing a brutal murder 20 days earlier. The young man had been present when someone fatally shot taxi driver Isaiah Salazar outside of a convenience store. The chances are Alexander was killed simply for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Both Salazar and Alexander's murders remain unsolved to this day. Thanks for watching. If you were summoned to testify against a powerful gang member and the authorities offered witness protection, would you enter the program for your own safety, or would you turn down the offer to stay close to your loved ones? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time. Bye.